All of your local and state news in one place. Tune into The District on WHIP, Philly's #1 college radio station. Welcome to the 5th episode of The District. I know last week I was without my co-host, but he is back this week. Thank you.
Yeah, but you were able to do it just fine without me. You don't need me for this, but it is fun. I'm happy I'm back here. I know our schedules don't exactly always work out considering we're both really committed with various organizations at Temple, classes, work, et cetera,
yes.
You name it. But we make sure we have time for the podcast. And what a week to make sure we're both here because it's the most eventful week since we've started the podcast.
Yes, the most political week by far. I mean, it was Election Day 2 days ago.
I know, and I feel like we haven't gotten much sleep since. No one really. If you've been covering the election for whatever outlet, professional, or even at the collegiate level like us, you were up late that night. You were up early the next day talking about it, and that's all we've been doing here for WHIP, from being at the draft tours for broadcasting for 6.5 hours straight to the next day talking about it, and been on WHIP since. It's been so much fun. And again, being a big sports fan, the equivalent is like this is the Super Bowl, except the difference is, the presidential election's only once every 4 years.
True. Yep.
Like the Olympics, I guess.
Yes,
So if you're a fan of the Olympics, yeah. So it was the big day. After a year of anticipation, it finally came to us. So let's break down, I guess, some of those results in a little bit. But first, let's talk about leading up to it. One of the biggest stories was SEPTA was on strike the last time we talked, or the last time you were on, and it ended. So go into the details.
It did end. It was only a week this time, so it was actually pretty beneficial. It ended the day before Election Day, actually, 5 a.m. Monday, November 7th. And pretty much, SEPTA had a lot of problems with the Trade Workers Union. A lot of that included breaks, health care, wages, this, that, and the third. But the biggest thing that led them to not get an agreement until 5 a.m. that morning was pensions. That was the biggest discourse. Now that SEPTA does give them a little bit leeway of a pension, pretty much they're saying that they have a little bit more, I guess, freedom, what you could say. What exactly happened is that now that their wages will now rise by about 10% over the 5 years, and that their healthcare contributions with the Trade Workers Union is on a flat rate, essentially. So just because, say, someone has cancer or something very, very severe, their money would just not cut at, like, I guess, $5,000, $6,000, $10,000. It wouldn't be a flat rate depending on the severity of their health. So therefore, someone with something as a minor cold would not get the same package as someone who has, like, cancer.
Exactly. So I guess a couple things to talk about the SEPTA strike. One, we were kind of gearing up, bringing it back to the election, we were gearing up for SEPTA possibly to be on strike for Election Day. And that could have changed the map and the results here in Philadelphia a bit. I mean, luckily for those, hopefully everyone in SEPTA, the union workers, are happy with the agreement they came to, because I think they're one of the unsung heroes of the city. People don't talk about how vital SEPTA is. Often we criticize the conditions of public transportation because they're not ideal. And there's certain cities where I understand, quite frankly, it may be cleaner or maybe they're more efficient. Whatever, people have their biases. I haven't been to many other cities where I've taken public transportation, but I know that it's a very important part of the city, and I'm really hopeful that the workers who I think don't get talked about enough, and I think they don't get the credit they deserve, I hope the agreement they came to, they're happy with, because this is a 5-year agreement, correct?
Yes, 5 years.
So hopefully in 5 years, we don't have to see another issue where there's bickering between the two. It's kind of par for the course now for them to go on strike.
Yeah.
This one was only 6 days. The last time they were on strike, I was in high school. It was 2009 or 2010. I forget. It was either one, but I was a freshman in high school.
Okay.
And the strike wasn't too long. It was only, I believe, 9 days at the most.
Okay.
And I took SEPTA my freshman year of high school to my high school. So I was only a mile and a half away, so I had the luxury, actually just shy of a mile and a half, so I had the luxury of being able to walk or getting rides from friends. So for me, it wasn't too bad, but I know other people where it affected more so. And you could see that it affects the whole city. The whole flow of the city is in tune with its public transportation system. So I hope they came to an agreement they like, and hopefully the next strike they have, which it's inevitable, hopefully it's not long. Like this one being 6 days isn't too bad. In the grand scheme of things, I know for 1 week it made it inconvenient for workers and for SEPTA workers. Yes. It's not the most pleasant week, but it's good they came to that agreement.
It is. I mean, the union did have a public statement essentially saying that they didn't get everything they wanted, but, I mean, compromises, negotiations, that's to be expected. The agreement itself does not get signed till November 19th. But what I was saying essentially is that like they're not entirely happy, but like negotiations, that's kind of what happens. You have to have a give and take. SEPTA has been gone on strike 12 times since 1975, so I wouldn't say this is not. It's a pretty common occurrence.
Yeah,
it is.
It happens every couple years or so, and it's something Philadelphia has now come to expect. Not that people look forward to the strikes happening, but it's just a reality of the situation between the unions and some of the SEPTA bosses.
Yeah, but I mean, right now it's over, and we don't really have to think about this until at least another 5 years.
And thankful that it didn't, at least to our knowledge, since SEPTA was back up and running, and since it was up and running, the day they came to the agreement was Monday morning. I was taking SEPTA again. I was on the Broad Street line and the Market Frankford line Monday night to go to the Clinton rally in Philadelphia. So everyone, as soon as it was back up and running, people were ecstatic to know they can go back on those lines that they typically go on.
As soon as they get back and running, I actually had a few free rides. They just said to go through it. So,
really?
Yeah, they were actually very accommodating. Like, SEPTA workers were just happy to be back at work.
I bet they were. And I'm sure it was a relief to them that they came to that agreement because, when they're on strike, they're not getting paid at that point.
True.
So anyway, we talked about SEPTA coming to an agreement, and luckily it didn't have too big of a role in the election because some people were fearful that if they were on strike, that would limit people going to the polls. Granted, Uber and Lyft were actually offering free rides to the polls if SEPTA was on strike, so there were alternatives out there for it, but not everyone has Uber and Lyft. And
True.
I mean, people our age, it's common knowledge that everyone almost has it seems like, but to those that are maybe not as savvy with technology or aren't on smartphones as much, because basically Lyft and Uber are just strictly
smartphones, essentially.
Bingo, yeah.
Like the average 60-year-old woman who's lived in Philly her entire life probably doesn't even know about Uber and Lyft.
Yeah, and if they know about it, I guarantee you they do not. They don't frequent Lyft as people in college,
probably
like
not.
us do. But anyway, election night. It was a crazy night, Taylor. Where did you watch it?
I was at home with friends, and we were all together.
Home, or are you talking Temple home?
No, Temple home. I was at my apartment. We had 5 or 6 friends. We made popcorn. Someone brought brownies. It was actually a really cute little intimate little gathering.
That sounds
just,
nice.
5 or 6 of us. Yeah, it was an interesting night to say the least.
How late were they at your place till?
Till the very end, so till 3 o'clock
No
in the
way.
morning. We all stared at the TV. We waited till the very last minute.
You stuck it out. So
we stuck it
how
out.
late were you anticipating staying up until?
Honestly, I thought I'd be over by midnight.
Really?
The latest. I was like, this is gonna be fine.
Oh, boy,
According to the polls, said this will be fine. I mean, not fine, but they said this will be over pretty quickly. According to news outlets the days before. So I really didn't anticipate being up that late. Was I wrong?
And the outcome surprised many, many, many people.
Yes.
But anyway, let's talk about some of those results. We'll start off with Senator Pat Toomey, the junior Republican incumbent senator up for re-election. He was up against Katie McGinty, the Democratic challenger. We had the pleasure of interviewing McGinty before the Democratic primary, before this election. Unfortunately, we didn't get a chance to talk to Toomey. We hope to talk to him sometime in the near future for WHIP. But the most expensive race in the United States Senate, one of the most crucial, because people know that if Toomey were to lose, that gives the Democrats a better chance at regaining the Senate. And it was close all night. We were following it the whole time. I think it was officially called, I want to say around 11-something?
Around 11-something. Toomey won with 49 to McGinty's 47, so it was very close.
And it was called with 98% of the vote. And so it took a lot of votes to be counted.
Yeah, for them to be all right, definitively Toomey has got this.
And it was huge because the Republicans had a absolutely incredible night for them, considering they got to retain control of the House of Representatives. It was expected. Still, they were able to retain control of the House. The Senate was up in the air. Many pundits were saying the Democrats have a chance at taking the White House and the U.S. Senate. And some people were acknowledging that since Trump going into the night was an underdog, that the importance for Republicans was that they had to retain control of the Senate. And they did just that. And this was one of the most key races that Toomey was able to do so. Now, let's look at 2 races both races he was in for the United States Senate. 2010 was the huge Republican takeover in the House and the Senate, in which the Republicans took control of both.
Yes, that's true.
Under President Obama, and made it a lot tougher for him to get
anything
things
passed. Essentially.
Correct. And it was that big Tea Party wave. And who was elected that year to the United States Senate? Senator Pat Toomey. He was running against Joe Sestak, who was a congressman. We talked to Sestak and interviewed him. He ran again this year in the Democratic primary to no success. He lost to McGinty. But Toomey squeaked out a victory against Sestak, only won by, I believe, 2% in a huge Republican year. So you think that he's somewhat vulnerable. Pennsylvania is a state in which has voted Democrat at the presidential level every election since 1988. So you're thinking to yourself, all right, even though it's a moderate state and it's considered a battleground state, Toomey's rather vulnerable. And there was a lot of money poured in from both ends of the spectrum.
Toomey knew he was vulnerable. That's why there were so much ads on TV. Like, I don't know about you, but anytime I turned on my TV, I just saw a lot of negative ads against McGinty. And I knew it was by Toomey. But you knew that he was at least worried about his seat because you wouldn't have spent that much money in advertising.
Bingo.
You knew that you were subjected to maybe losing your seat is because how much more money was poured in. This is the most expensive Senate race ever. Over $150 million was poured into this race.
And Toomey, again, by the skin of his teeth, some may say, but he won. Yeah. And some would say that he's lucky that both years he ran were two big Republican years, 2010 and 2016. But he's got 6 more years to be in the United States Senate representing the state of Pennsylvania. His colleague, Senator Bob Casey, the Democrat, will be up for re-election in 2018, I believe?
2018, yes.
Yeah. So, look, he's got a re-election bid to worry about soon. So, Republicans now happy that they were able to win Pennsylvania because they were quite concerned about it. But they were able to win PA at the general election. Trump was able to take it, and Toomey. They both had different routes there, which is why we should talk about that. Trump had some success in Philly. In pockets of South Philly, far northeast Philly, Trump pulled fairly well, and that helped him. Toomey, on the other hand, had the route of more of a traditional conservative would in PA, which he had a lot of support in the rural areas.
Philadelphia overwhelmingly did vote for McGinty, but Toomey had the outside
and the suburbs he did fairly well in the suburbs of Philly, where Trump struggled immensely in the suburbs of Philadelphia. Yeah. But Toomey had some success there. A lot of those moderates in the suburbs seemed to pick Toomey over McGinty.
Well, Toomey did an excellent job of running as the independent candidate. He has said over and over again that, like, yes, he supports his party, but he is not a rubber stamp, as he calls it. He is an independent candidate. He runs as a free thinker. Like, that was a really big part of his platform, and people liked it.
And I think in a state like Pennsylvania, you're not going to see someone like a Bernie Sanders or a Ted Cruz elected in PA. They're both opposite ends of the spectrum. One very liberal, one very conservative. As Toomey had to make his case that, look, he's not far to the right, because if he ran a campaign that was a far to the right conservative campaign, he wouldn't win in PA. He did a good job at, talking about independent not being a rubber stamp. I think that was ultimately the determining factor in how he won. And Republicans can rejoice that they now retain control of the Senate, too. So, huge night for them.
Hey, the Republicans have the Senate, the House, and the presidency. That has not happened since 1928 under Hoover. So, historical on that front. Like, this is an amazing year for Republicans, and no one can deny that.
Yeah, and Toomey, again, it may have been a close one. It cost a lot of money, a lot of time, but he does get the nod. Moving forward, though, there's so many elections that night that, so many races that we were looking at. Let's talk about the one that specifically happened in Philly. And in the 2nd Congressional District, even bringing it more hyper-local that we try to do here, is the 2nd Congressional District right here at Temple University.
Yeah, Dwight Evans wins the Fattah's congressional seat. He's officially pretty much representing District 2. This is not surprising, considering this is a very Democratic section of the city. The 2nd District has more than 82% Democrats. So essentially, we kind of knew that Dwight Evans would have taken this congressional seat as soon as he beat out Fattah. What you should know about Dwight Evans beating Fattah is that Fattah had this seat for 11 years. Okay.
Yeah.
The reason, more or less, that he won
11 terms.
11 terms. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Yeah, that's fine.
What you should know about that is that Fattah pretty much lost because of his 22 counts that he was convicted for. He's not going to be sentenced until December, but because of that scandal, Dwight Evans was able to take that. He did beat Republican James Jones, but again, it's so much of a Democratic portion of the city, the 2nd District, that we kind of knew that he was going to win.
Absolutely.
Months ago.
So it's newsworthy because Fattah was at the forefront of a lot of newspapers, not just locally. Some national outlets picked up the Fattah scandals and looked at it as, look, he's a career politician who has been in power in this specific district in parts of North Philadelphia all the way to the lower main line. So covers a pretty big range of people. So it's a very Democratic district, yes, but kind of diverse because it's not all North Philadelphia. There's parts of the main line. This is a big district. We knew that Dwight Evans was going to win. It was just that who were the Democrats going to take to kind of take that seat? there was a primary process, of course. Fattah actually ran in that primary as well. Didn't win, to no surprise.
Yes.
But Dwight Evans, who's been in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives for quite some time, got the nod. And he's someone who's really politically, he's got the experience in the House of Representatives. It's just that next step forward that he's been a name known in his district, in his area for quite some time. People know who Dwight Evans is.
Yes.
He's 62 years old, so he's been around the block. But it was that next step where they replaced Fattah with an experienced politician who knows this district very well.
And because Fattah resigned back in June, he immediately gets to go to D.C. Like, he's immediately headed. Like, his job essentially starts today. Mm-hmm. So good for him, especially since, he hasn't had a lot of success politically. I mean, he has, but, like, he did try to run for mayor in the past, and he did try to run for governor at some point unsuccessfully back in the 90s. So this is a great day for him.
Yeah, and again, you talk about those trials and tribulations for him, that he ran for mayor in 1999. He ran for, and that's when, of course, Mayor Street ended up winning and became mayor for 2 terms. 2007, he decided to give it another go after Street's term was ending. He ran into Michael Nutter, who ended up winning, unsuccessful for him. So he gave it a go twice, also gave it a go in 94 for governor. Didn't work out for him there as well. But he wanted to make that next step. Not to say he wasn't content in the House of Representatives in Pennsylvania, but I think he wanted to make that next leap because he saw that to his liking, he thought he did a good enough job in the House of Representatives in PA that he thought he could have a bigger office and he could have more responsibility. And to be the United States congressman is a huge privilege, a huge deal, and congratulations to him on getting that victory.
He saw upward mobility and he took it, and he also got endorsements from Mayor Kenney, so that had to have helped. So I'm happy for him. I mean, this is great for him.
Yeah, and I think people are happy not even to put our bias in it, just that we could put the whole Fattah thing in the past.
Yeah.
That it was a black eye. It was
a stain on Philadelphia. It really was.
No, thank you. It's the truth that people just looked at a politician that abused his powers, and he was a guy that had prominence in the area. Fattah was a well-known figure in Philadelphia, and when these scandals came out in the reports, and when he was found, was it guilty? How many charges was it?
22.
22. Wow. Being convicted of 22 counts. What was it? Including racketeering, conspiracy, bribery, money laundering, and fraud. All pretty terrible things to be convicted of, and it wasn't just one count. There were so many things he was found on, and it was one of those things where you just want that seat filled by someone new. Yes. Wipe the slate clean.
Especially since they were federal things that you cannot mess with, and that were definitely damaging to not just him, but Philadelphia's persona to other cities, to the country. So correct. I'm glad we can put this to rest.
Thank
officially.
God. So congratulations to Dwight Evans, who is the new congressman. Now, like you said, not starting in January. Today. Right now, his work starts for the people of the 2nd Congressional District. That includes people, hey, you're living at Temple right now. What he does directly affects what we do here at Temple.
Yeah, he has work cut out for him.
Absolutely.
Next up is that the election was not good news for everyone.
To say the least.
If
you were at Temple, I can actually speak to this at the draft tours Tuesday night. As we were calling it, as the results were coming out, they had it on the TV, and we were announcing it as well. And to say the least, colleges, specifically in an inner city, not inner city, I guess, but in the city like Philadelphia.
A more urban area.
Yeah, fairly liberal. So when the results were coming out, when Hillary would win a big state, like she won Virginia, heard some claps at the bar, and the other states that were somewhat valuable. People cheered. And when they saw Trump winning states and he started piling them up, people weren't too happy. So it's safe to say, after Donald Trump was announced the president-elect, early into the morning, I think it was 3:30 here.
3:30, yeah, in the morning.
Yeah, as we all were barely awake, but we had to stay awake to see that. But more than 1,000 rallied in march in protest of Trump's victory. They started at City Hall and took it all the way down here to Temple University on Broad Street. A lot of people there.
A lot of people, over 1,000. And just to put it in perspective, these weren't just Clinton supporters. These were just specifically Trump protesters. There really wasn't love for any candidate, essentially. They were pretty much just angry at the establishment. They were angry at the election. They were angry at choices, the Electoral College. There was just a lot of anger and, I guess, upsetness, if that's even a word, just among college students and anyone really in the city. Signs that just said something about protect our country. Certain things that were not the best also occurred, like burning American flags and certain rhetoric that was shared. But this is not new. I mean, Philadelphia is not the only city that is like this right now. Cities such as LA, Boston, Portland, Oakland, there's protests all around the city right now because of the election results.
Mm-hmm. And although this is still relatively breaking news, and there's a great amount of people, even conservatives, were caught off guard with Donald Trump's victory. And do you want proof that Republicans were surprised? Ask Senator Pat Toomey. When he was quoted, he said, "I'm surprised Donald Trump won." He said he didn't expect him to win. So that's someone who voted for him, who was in the United States Senate and was surprised. So in the environment that Philadelphia is, and major cities across the country, does it catch you off guard that people were protesting? No, not whatsoever. You just really hope that everything remains peaceful, because this is their right, and it's actually democracy taking place right in front of you when you see people marching through the streets and protesting. That's fine. Even though he won the Electoral College, he lost the popular vote, but that doesn't determine who wins. So Trump did win fair and square, per se, but you have the right to, even if you know that, look, he won fair and square, you still have the right to voice your displeasure for him. That's what makes this country beautiful. The only thing that I have to say as an anecdote, just the way people act, I'm not the biggest fan. I don't like seeing the American flag being burned. You're allowed to do so, and under the law, you don't get locked up for it.
It's actually a case, and it's protected by the First Amendment. It is a form of protest, and it is protected. I'm not saying that it's right or that people like witnessing it, but it is protected.
It's something that I've never witnessed firsthand in person. I hope I never do. That's just a personal anecdote to it, but in a sense, they have the right to do so as well. The only thing I do ask to those who protest, and I'm sure we're going to see more of it, my gauge is that we're going to see protesters from now for the next couple of days, maybe a week or so.
Absolutely.
It'll probably die down at some point, and then around Inauguration Day in January, I think it's going to pick back up. So this isn't the end of it, and it's not just Philly; it's cities across the country. The only thing I ask is that I hope all those who protest, as long as they're of the legal age to vote, I hope they voted, because it rubs me the wrong way that if you go out and protest but you didn't exercise your right to vote, I think that. Look, I'm sure there's a decent amount of people that did that, and it's like you could have helped in that change that you wanted to see. And that's just a personal thing that it upsets me when people don't vote. I just think it's one of those privileges that years and years ago, certain groups of people weren't able to vote, and it's upsetting to think that was ever a point in American history. But now we all have that luxury. When you're 18 years of age, and you register, you can vote. And I hope that those who are protesting realize that if they thought their vote didn't matter, do you know how many people probably share that same opinion? And a lot of these, states were very close. Florida, yes. Pennsylvania, Michigan, separated by just thousands of votes. And I'm sure when you talk to your friends, there's one out of every so many that think their vote doesn't count.
And
it adds up, but it adds up. And the point is, so many people feel that way that if less people started to think that way, maybe they could have gotten the result they chose to see. So I just really hope those who are protesting realize that if you didn't vote, what can you say that? What did you do to help try to stop it if you're that opposed to this candidate?
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I just believe that everyone should exercise their vote, whether or not you like either candidates.
You can vote third party if you want, even if that person has no chance at winning, which we know every time the third party candidate has no chance at winning.
We all know this, but just please vote. Just because I don't care what kind of person you are, I don't care what race you are, gender, or even political affiliation. Someone died for your right to vote, so exercise it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, and it's one of those things I feel fairly passionate about that. As long as you're of age, and even if you're not the most politically engaged, certain people like me and you cover politics, and we really enjoy it. We it's a point where we go out of our way to read tons of stories, go online, watch TV, watch political shows. So I guess we're the exception, where not everyone is as politically engaged. But even to those who don't necessarily exactly love what's going on or don't know, I'd still recommend you go out and vote. Learn just a little bit about each candidate so you can form an opinion and go out and exercise that right.
2 days after the election, I just really hope that people just respect each other at the end of the day. People have very polarizing opinions. I can say this firsthand. I have very polarizing opinions for much of my family and the people who I live back home. Mm-hmm. However, please respect each other at the end of the day.
I couldn't agree more. And that's all you can ask for. That this transition of power, hopefully, is a rather peaceful one, where President Obama and President-elect Donald Trump actually met today in the White House, and it seemed rather civil between the two, although I'm sure behind closed doors they don't love each other, considering just how nasty the campaign got. The charges made from both gentlemen about how they don't like each other, quite frankly.
Yes, a lot of attacks on character. It got very personal.
Actually, absolutely, and I hope that. But it's good to see them kind of coming together right now. And even if you don't like the outcome, President Obama, I think, worded it very nicely. We're all on the same team. You're not, even if you're unhappy with the results, we're all in this together, essentially. So the president's success is the country's success. So hopefully we all come together, and hopefully hopefully the divide starts to end, because there is quite a divide, I think, right now.
We'll see what happens over the next 4 years, to say the least.
Yeah. So one of those big issues I think Donald Trump was running on was about illegal immigration. And
yes.
In Pennsylvania, we've seen illegal immigration talked about quite a bit in the past couple months, from the House of Representatives to the mayor of Philadelphia and Philadelphia's sanctuary city status. Mayor Kenney is hoping that it doesn't change. What do you got to talk about it?
Well, I just want to first start out by saying that within his 100 days, you could actually look at this online. Donald Trump states that he will defund funding for sanctuary cities. He says that quite front blank. He puts that right on his 100-day statement. Kenney was asked about this from a reporter, and his exact response was, first of all, we've changed the name for sanctuary city to the Fourth Amendment city. We respect and live up to the Fourth Amendment, which means you can't be held against your will without a warrant from the court signed by a judge. So yeah, we will continue to be a Fourth Amendment city abiding by the Constitution. When he was further questioned by this, saying, what if Donald Trump, furthers this and he enforces his rule of defunding sanctuary cities, he responded by, we will cross that bridge when we get there. Not exactly the most comforting response, at least for someone who, at least for the advocates of sanctuary cities, that's not the most comforting response. Going on with that, Philadelphia is not the only city that has this response. Seattle actually also said that they would try to remain as a sanctuary city. The advocates of sanctuary city typically says they want to improve relations between undocumented immigrants and police, and they want to ensure that if there is a problem with an undocumented immigrant, they would ask for help without fear of being deported. That is the idea behind a sanctuary city, is that everyone is still more or less protected under the law.
Correct.
However, people who do not believe in sanctuary cities essentially think it's a threat to safety. In a nutshell, that is the dissent to the idea of sanctuary cities.
And we've seen, not only at the national level, this being as used as a topic of discussion. In the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, Martina White and other Republicans have tried to change Philadelphia to get rid of this quote-unquote sanctuary city status. I like Mayor Kenney's wording, talking about it being a Fourth Amendment city, because I think that may, in part, maybe change the dialogue a bit. But we know what they're trying to get at. And again, a big part of Donald Trump's campaign was about illegal immigration. This is something that started, I think, some of his big media coverage.
Yeah, I would say that's a big reason for his support, I would argue, because that's one of his big platforms.
It's one of the pillars,
the wall, and was you have to come here legally, I'm protecting your safety. That was one of his
And he talked about deporting 11 million people.
Yes.
So it wasn't just merely putting up a wall. He was talking about taking those people who are here illegally and taking them out, and then they could therefore re-enter legally. Will he deport 11 million people? I highly doubt that. But it was part of his campaign and platform, yeah. But Philadelphia, again, with Trump winning, I know Mayor Kenney was a staunch supporter of Hillary Clinton. He's obviously not happy with the outcome. But, hey, we'll see if this status changes in Philly, because when you have a change in power like that, and someone like Donald Trump, who's one of his campaign messages was illegal immigration sanctuary city status, we shall see if this ends up changing.
We'll see if it ends up changing. But for now, Philadelphia's a sanctuary city. The mayor is not thinking of changing it. And I have a feeling until someone comes knocking on Philly's door, there is no part in changing that. Probably not.
I think we're going to see some feuds between Mayor Kenney and Mr. Donald, President-elect Donald Trump. We already saw Mayor Kenney take shots at Donald Trump through Twitter in the past couple of weeks, and most recently taking a shot at Rudy Giuliani, who's suspected to be one of the names being considered for Donald Trump's attorney general spot. So there we go. I think this is going to be a feud we're going to be following here in Philadelphia for quite some time.
Yeah, this story
for at least 4 years.
This story is far from over.
Yeah, this is just the beginning, folks, and the district will keep you in We'll keep you involved every step of the way.
Every step of the way. We'll see you guys next week.